people and that does not come under the UN High Command. It started when the Arab governments refused to allow any of these individuals to settle permanently in Arab lands. What has happened is that UNWRA has taken it upon itself to interpret its mission to continue the life of the refugees inside the camps.
UNWRA's definition of a refugee is somebody who lived in Palestine 2 years before he was expelled, which is not very convincing.
There have been refugees from the Balkans, refugees from Central America, Guatemala, refugees from Rwanda and the Great Lakes region, and other parts of the world, in the former Soviet Union, when the former Soviet Union collapsed. All these refugees were afforded the right of return.
There are people in protracted refugee problem in Africa in particular, problems that have not been resolved for many years. The Afghan refugee problem is one of the biggest in the world. And then there are a large number of people in the former Soviet Union who are stateless, people who, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, could not fit anywhere in any of the countries that came into existence.
The problem of the Palestinians is not only with the Israelis, it's also with the UN itself.
Israel was created with the full authority of the United Nations. Ironically, however, the United Nations today has turned against Israel in so many ways, and the reason for this is the group basis of the United Nations structure.
As much as we are hoping that the UN will treat the refugee problem seriously, we only kid ourselves, because the UN is basically a political organization. The Arab League needs the refugee problem in order to maintain its cohesion against Israel.
If you visit Gaza, there is a whole neighborhood, Sheikh Radwan. In the early 70s, Israel started to settle refugees in decent houses built by Israel's civil administration. And there was a whole campaign by the PLO and others to prevent the refugees of going and living in these houses in Sheikh Radwan. So it is very, very clear that there was no interest in any kind of interim solutions, because this was the dynamo of the national Palestinian movement.
Since 1971, and for close to 10 years, the UN General Assembly condemned Israel every year for its attempt to rehabilitate the Palestinian refugees. This condemnation always carried one requirement: send the refugees to the camps.
I don't think that UNRWA really would like to solve the issue of the refugees, because that issue, if it is going to be solved, then tens of thousands of employees from UNRWA will be jobless people.
This is not a new debate that organizations, administrations tend to perpetuate themselves. And by perpetuating themselves, they perpetuate the problem they are in charge of.
يعني وبتقدر تطلع الشغل يعني بتقدر تقبض
الشغل فيش راك واحد من فيش الشغل
Si tu travailles, tu peux pas toucher. Si tu travailles pas, tu touches.
UNRWA would like to continue feeding, taking care about food, taking care about health, taking care about cleaning, about education, forever, forever.
وحق العودة هو حق مضمون حسب قرارات الأمم المتحدة، والأمم المتحدة هي منظمة تتعامل في المسائل السياسية، ولكن طالما بقى الوضع على ما هو عليه فإن الأونروا ستستمر في تقديم مساعداتها الإنسانية ومساعدات الإغاثة للاجئين الفلسطينيين.
It is a political issue, because when there is no peace between Lebanon, as an example, and Syria, these governments try to take the refugees as a strong card in their hands, threatening all the time the Israelis that if you are not going to do so and so, we will do so and so. I already have been in several refugee camps outside in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, and you couldn't believe how these people are really living there for so long time.
هون الفلسطينية بلبنان مثلا في دكاترة معينين ما بيدخلوا للمستشفيات عشان اللي فلسطينية العمل وفي على الشغل في المهندسين كثير فلسطينية ما بيخلون يشتغلوا شو السوريين أحسن مننا أكلين البلد.
عم نواجه من جهة التعليم انه عم نتعلم بس بمصاري كمان، انه التعليم هون كله بمصاري، بالذات يعني الواحد لما يخلص بده يروح يتحكم كمان بمصاري، بالجامعة ما بنقدر نفوت الا ما تدفع مصاري، فنحن كل هذا يعني اذا ما دفعت بهالبلد ما بتعيش. فنحن هون كلنا يعني كل شباب مخيم شتيلة بتمنوا انه يرجعوا على فلسطين يعيشوا معيشة احسن من هون.
They were the subject of a cynical abandonment by their people, their brethren, the international community.
يا عم الفلسطيني اللي برا ناخذ جميع حقوقه، احنا هون ما إلنا حقوق، يعني الواحد بيتخرج دكتور ممنوع يعالج برا، صيدلي ممنوع يفتح صيدلية برا، بالبلدية ممنوع يتوظف، اللي هي يعني شغلة زبال ممنوع يتوظف، بينما برا الفلسطيني بياخذ جميع حقوقه، وغير الحصار اللي معمول علينا.
إلا أن مخيم غزة لا يحمل هذه الخاصية، وهي أنه لا يحمل الجنسية الأردنية، لا يحمل جواز سفر أردني، لا يحمل رقم وطني. كل ما يستطيع أن يملكه هذا المواطن في أفضل حالاته أنه يحمل جواز سفر أردني مؤقت. حتى الرقم الوطني بيسموه بعض الناس رقم الشخصي، لك رقم شخصي ولا ملكش رقم شخصي. هناك فئة أقل نسبيا تحمل وثائق سفر فلسطينية صادرة عن الحكومة المصرية، وهناك فئة أقل بكثير وهي محدودة نوعا ما، فئة من الناس لا تحمل أي إثبات جنسية، لا جواز سفر أردني مؤقتة ولا وثائق سفر فلسطينية، إنما هي بدون أي إثباتات، فلذلك هي تعيش خلينا نسميه تحت بند بدون.
The refugees were kept in the camps because to give that up is to give part of the Palestinian claim. In the process, of course, they suffered. And in the process, they also suffered so much, they went to the extreme a little bit, and they became the people who fought for Arafat and volunteered and did the various things they did on behalf of the Palestinian cause. You put somebody in a tent for about 20 years in conditions where he hasn't got clean drinking water, and this is the situation in many of the camps, and he's going to become an extremist. And the Arabs took a united position on this. You know, we're not going to settle the Palestinian issue by giving up the right of return. So the refugees were kept on these camps. They were kept there as what? As a bargaining point.
Unfortunately, Arab governments don't want to take any responsibility on these refugees, and they consider them as not a permanent residents, but residents on a temporary basis that one day these people must have to go back to their homeland.
Clearly, this is consistent with what the Palestinian Authority and what Yasser Arafat has been about since day one. They have ultimately said that we cannot ever give up this alleged right of return. And in fact, what the alleged right of return is a way to do away with the right of the State of Israel to exist as a Jewish state without even lifting up any arms.
There are several bodies of international law which guarantee a right of return. It's a fundamental